Hey, welcome. My name is Rachel Smith, and this is the Natural Health Rising podcast. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and the owner of Natural Health Rising, which is my online holistic functional medicine company where I help people who have autoimmune diseases, chronic illnesses, mystery symptoms, and a whole host of other imbalances restore their health by natural means. On this podcast, you're going to hear conversations between myself and other health experts on functional medicine and general holistic health. My goal is to provide you with the tools you need in order to help you rise to your healthiest and happiest self. So on this episode of the Natural Health Rising podcast, I have James Berry with me. So James has over 16 years of experience in the culinary field. He started as a private chef, cooking for celebrities such as Tom Cruise, George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, Barbara Streisand, and John Cusack. Most recently, James launched his first functional food product, Pluck, an organ-based seasoning. It's the first of its kind and an easy and delicious way for people to get organ meats into their diet. James is also a published cookbook author, having co-authored the recipes in Margaret Floyd's book, Eat Naked, and co-authored the follow-up cookbook, The Naked Foods Cookbook. He most recently co-authored the recipes in Dr. Alejandro Junger's book, Clean 7. Welcome to the show, James.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. And oh my God, what an impressive lineup for people that you used to cook for. I have to ask, how did you wind up cooking for those celebrities?
I know it's funny. I went to a hiring place at one point in my career, where they would help get me out to other clients, and they were like, "How did you build this resume without working with someone like us?" And I'm like, "I don't know." It was just kind of word of mouth. I went to a culinary school that was known for supporting private households, to supporting people and becoming private chefs, and particularly like known for healthy cooking. It was a school in New York. It doesn't exist anymore. At least now it's part of some other program. But probably my first 2 years of clients came from referrals from the school. I mean, it was pretty awesome. I have to say, I mean, the school was really supportive, and I was also, I think, unique. And when I showed up, I was in my 30s when I showed up, and I was like, I showed up to learn, and there were a lot of people that had just gotten out of high school, and they kind of just were excited to be in New York. They weren't excited to be at culinary school. And so they didn't show up sometimes, but I got like a perfect attendance. I was like showing up to learn during Saturday farmers markets. I was staging in restaurants. Like I really took advantage of being there. And I think the school recognized that I was very dependable and reliable. And so that's why I got so many referrals.
Very cool. Well, how did you get started to becoming a chef anyways? Because from what I read online, it sounds like as a kid, you had a pretty standard American diet.
Yeah.
So where did that shift into being a chef and making meals actually healthy?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I joke, but it's actually very serious that we knew dinner was ready because the smoke detector went off. That was my kind of exposure, at least in my household, to cooking. I mean, it was very basic. But I think a lot of times where we go in life is dictated by the contrasts. Like you're raised a certain way, and then that kind of pushes you into the opposite direction and gets you curious about that. At least that's been my experience. So from pretty early on, I would say in my late teens, early 20s, I just was really fascinated with how do I make comfort foods, the foods that everyone gravitate towards, how do I make those healthy? Because I kind of instinctively knew that if I could make comfort foods healthy, then I was onto something, because that's what everyone gravitates to all the time. I mean, COVID is a perfect example, right? When COVID hit, most health practices went out the door, and what people gravitated to or defaulted to were like all their addictions, or all the kind of comfort foods, the safety zones, the emotional comfort foods like sugar and alcohol and pastries, donuts were popular, like everything that was kind of like the thing that we're always trying to avoid when you're trying to be healthy. And so I'm really like, I've always been slanted towards that, towards making everyday foods healthy.
Mm. Okay. So instead of saying we have to cut out the mac and cheese and the burgers and the brownies, how do we how do we take those and create a healthy version of those things so that we can not feel restricted and still enjoy things like that?
Yeah, exactly. That is what I tend to focus on. And how I focus on that is I really look at a couple of factors. And this is kind of how I would approach clients, is when I would first work with them, I wouldn't just say, what are your favorite foods? I would say, well, what do you eat when you're having a hard day? Or
Mm.
what did you eat when you were a kid? What textures do you tend to gravitate towards? Because, as humans, we do look for things that are easy, and we look for things that are delicious. Those are really, if I boil down, like, what are the two characteristics of food that I need to hit as a chef to make sure that health becomes not only a habit, but like a lifestyle. I have to hit those two things. It has to be healthy and it has to be delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I tend to focus on. So, with mac and cheese, for example, I mean, I was doing this long time ago, way before it was popular. But like, I would take cauliflower and I would mess around with it, or I would take spaghetti sauce or sorry, spaghetti squash, or I was using vegetables in a way to recreate those noodles, and really then focusing on the texture that people get from mac and cheese. It's that kind of creaminess, but also that has a bite to it. So I was always trying to basically recreate that. And you could do that with the sauce. You could make it, have a cheesy flavor, even if you were avoiding dairy. I would use nuts and seeds, and I would use nutritional yeast and onions, and I would kind of create really tasty sauces to make these foods remind people of the one that they're having to avoid, but obviously being healthier, and really just making sure they didn't feel deprived. I mean, that was ultimately it, was
Mm-hmm.
just to help people get through it emotionally, because food is just so emotional.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's something. So when someone starts working with me, for example, we do a big shift from standard American food to gluten-free, dairy-free, all these things while they're healing. And that's a big freak out moment for someone, is when they say, well, what do you mean I can't have my pasta, or I can't have this or that? But my goal is always to say, hey, no, what can we swap instead of that? Well, let's do some cassava pasta instead of doing, which is a root, instead of doing the grain pasta and all that kind of stuff. So I think that there's always a swap out there for people. You just have to dig a little bit deeper into that and figure out what it can be for you. So it doesn't have to be so restrictive.
Absolutely. I mean, it's gotten so much easier, as you said at the intro. I mean, I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, and the options back in the day weren't what they are now. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so many new products out there that make eating with restrictions so much easier. But even then, I still caution people to not fall asleep at the cart. Like, you still really have to read the labels, because even things like,
Yes.
sweet potato starch. Well, that's, people think when they get those kind of noodles, because they're gluten-free, they're like, oh, it's sweet potatoes. It's like, no. This is the starch of the sweet potato. It's a isolated ingredient of the whole food that is called sweet potato. So it's not the same. And even that can spike insulin levels, so blood glucose levels. So you have to be, really careful about even these gluten-free products, because when gluten-free first came out, everyone thought, oh, that means it's healthier. And I was like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. It just means it's gluten-free. And sometimes it's worse, in terms of ingredients.
Oh, I agree. And it's funny. I'm glad you brought this up, because I actually want to ask you about this. Because on your Instagram, you'll post pictures of the back of, say, a bag of nuts or something. And you're like, hey, this looks healthy, but check it out. There's
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z in here. So are there if you have any top of mind that are top packaged foods or top ingredients that people should look out for and really reframe or rethink before they buy something?
I mean, I always like to focus on one thing, and the thing that I think most people are getting really poor oils, really bad ingredients from are like the oil, like the dressings and the sauces that they buy pre-made. So I tend to focus on that. But in general, I think that, you know, there's the age-old kind of talk of like, oh, we'll shop on the outsides of the aisles, not the inside, because the outsides is real food typically, and the insides are processed foods. I think so that still stands true. I think also to try to focus on foods that are ingredients versus foods that have ingredients. So meaning that, you know, if I'm buying, let's say, almonds, that I'm not buying almonds that have a bunch of ingredients. I'm buying almonds that have one ingredient, just almonds. So that means they're raw, probably. They're not roasted, because a lot of times if they're roasted, they have some kind of oil in them. If they are flavored, like, this is one thing people really have to understand is the way that they get flavor on nuts and seeds is they put some kind of like sugar or sweetener, something to make it stick. You can't get the, you know, you can't make beer nuts without sugar. You can't do these things, even wasabi, you know, whatever these flavors are, it will not stick without some kind of ingredient that is sticky. And so that's some kind of oil or sugar usually. But most importantly is just read the back. Like, don't focus on the front. The front of a label is its marketing still. It's not regulated. The back of a product is regulated. And if you don't understand those ingredients, then your body's not going to.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. What would you say is going wrong with our agriculture and our food supply today?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, there's so much that's talked about. I mean, I could get kind of dark about it, like that there is already talk that we are already past the breaking point, that basically in the next 20 years, 40 years, we're going to have a complete like destruction of our agricultural systems. Like we're not going to be able to grow food, mostly because the soils are so depleted, and we're still relying on these monocrop farms. I mean, some of these farms are as big as states. You know, they're huge farms, and they're growing, you know, single crops, usually soy, corn, and or wheat, and basically to grow such a huge farm, they're using, you know, synthetic fertilizers, they're using GMO seeds, they're using these unnatural products to basically replenish the soils. But what it does is actually keeps the soils depleted. And they've been measuring, you know, the agricultural department has been measuring produce in the US since the 60s. And they have tracked that produce is less nutrient rich like throughout time now. So basically they now have 60 years of data, and they can show you that you know, a tomato of 1960s is completely better than the tomato of today. And so that tells you right there, I mean, that's scary, first of all, and it's not talked about enough in the media. But it tells you right there that, well, no wonder we're not as healthy as our ancestors. It's like the food that we're eating that they received is, we're getting nutrient void, like the food that's less nutrient dense. So clearly we're going to have health issues, let alone the fact that air quality, water quality, soil quality, like these things are a mess, you know? So I get really scared when I think about what's not being talked about in the agricultural business. And I'm in no way an expert. I just do some research here and there. But where I kind of like to flip the script is, like, I look then at all the regenerative farming talk that is starting to happen. You know, there are so many amazing people that are over, even COVID helped support this. A lot of people moved to urban, to more rural areas and started farms. You know, so it's exciting to see that more and more people are getting interested in growing their own food and caring about where it's coming from, the seed to the soil. But I think we have to do more. I mean, I think we have to reach these bigger farms, and I worry that these bigger farms won't be able to change. I had an interesting conversation with, are you familiar with Joel Salatin of Polyface Farm?
No.
So he's pretty famous for being an innovator in terms of really getting the regenerative farming movement out there. And he's been doing this for a long time. And I saw him last year and I was like, so are you starting to get the due, are you starting to get kind of, are people finally starting to accept that you've been not a crazy farmer, that you've actually been speaking truth, and that what you do matters? And he said, no, could be what the feedback I get is actually from the big people. I'm talking from the big ag. They just say, oh, well, of course you only have 100 acres, try dealing with 200,000 acres. You know what I mean? Like they still look at him as a small, a small business, and so that his work that he's doing isn't like reputable because of that. And that's what scares me, is because if these big farms don't change, if the big companies don't change, then there's little we can do.
Yeah, I think another important thing for people listening too is we are technically voting every time we purchase food. So if we all purchase the grass-fed meats that we know are coming from a regenerative farm, well, then they have to keep producing that, right? And so, we somehow have to get this massive shift into everybody purchasing that way, so that we don't, I guess we show more that we need those things around.
Yeah, I agree. I just get worried though, because it sometimes feels like eating healthy is a wealthy person's problem. It's like that there are so many people out there that are, going from paycheck to paycheck. And if they have a choice, I mean, this was showcased in many documentaries, 10 years ago. If they have a choice of buying an apple for $4 or buying a Happy Meal for $4, they're going to buy the Happy Meal because they see that as getting more food for their buck. And that, I mean, that's just the reality. That is how a majority of people are living, is they focus on how much of an item can they get with that dollar. And it's funny too, because I'll go to the grocery store a lot. I mean, I kind of look at the grocery store as my office, and I'll look at people's carts. I like to see what people are buying. And I'll see a cart with all processed food.
Yeah.
And I'll watch their price, how much they're spending for their cart of food, just go up and up and up. And I think they don't even realize that, even though they're buying ramen noodles and, I don't know, TV dinners or frozen dinners, it's like they think it's going to be cheaper than buying the real stuff. And I would question if it is, you know what I mean? Like, I think that when it's all said and done, they're probably spending more than the person that is just buying the stuff from scratch and making their own products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really frustrating. It does feel backwards. Like, why are we paying more to be healthy?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And it's a big problem, and it's a little talked about problem, and I think it's even bigger than you and I even understand. I think there's a lot that's being hidden. I think there's a lot that that we don't even get to fully understand until years later. I mean, there's still stuff coming out about how, for example, Coca-Cola suppressed, information back in the day in the 80s and 90s about, how sugar was affecting people's health. And they made it sound like, oh, you could just run it off. You could drink Coke and then run it off and you were fine. And this is like 10, 20 years of data that they completely suppressed. And it shaped how we look at our health and our food and what we eat and how that affects our longevity. And, even with that coming out, I still don't see people, it's not like soda sales went down when that all came out. People are still buying just as much soda. I mean, it's a 4 billion plus business, right? So it's huge business. So I just feel it's all makes me go like, we have to think of food and the future of food health in a different way than we are. I think we're going about it the wrong way. I really think we have to think about it from the fact of like, okay, what are the foods that we're eating every day? And how can we make those not only healthier, but also more affordable?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so then it's a swap. It's not like a, hey, add this new health product to your regime, or make yourself feel better in your body as long as you get outside for 30 minutes. It's like, it's not a new thing that someone is adding to their already busy and overwhelmed state, but it's something that's just simply replacing something they already do, and now they're getting more benefit. I mean, honestly, that's kind of how I went about creating Pluck. That was really the focus of how I created it, because I was like, look, organ meats are the most nutrient dense food on the planet, and we're not eating them. We're not utilizing this natural whole food product that's there. It's there for our taking, and yet we're all suffering for it. So I was like, how can I get this product into your diet, but make it super easy, make it more affordable, and make it delicious? I mean, that was really the focus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I turned it into a seasoning, because by making it a seasoning, I then made it so it's shelf stable. You don't need to know how to cook it. You don't need to know how to, source it. You don't have to worry about it going bad. And then lastly, you already season your food. Like, so it's not requiring a new habit. I'm just saying, instead of using Lowry's or Old Bay or whatever it is you're using, just use this. And now you're getting the nutrients of organ meats every time you use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about organ meat specifically. Like, why are these so amazing for our health?
Well, so I believe, like, I created kind of the tenets of organ meat. So there's 7 of them. And these are the reasons why I really think we should focus on organ meat. So one is they're excellent sources of heme, which is, when you say put heme in front of iron, that's absorbable iron. And iron is not the only source of vitamins and nutrients. They also are rich in CoQ10 if it's heart. They have B12. They have other B vitamins. They have vitamin A. They have vitamin D, C, D, E, and K. They have they have folate. They have potassium, magnesium. I mean, it's kind of endless how many nutrients are in organ meats. So it's not just heme iron, but they really are excellent sources of heme iron. And a lot of people are very low iron. So that's something right away that you can incorporate into your diet and naturally get iron that's actually absorbable, particularly women who typically, when you menstruate, you probably right around your menstruation, you really are low in iron. So this is important for you to incorporate organ meats in your diet right away. Number 2, it helps retain muscle mass. So it contains all 9 essential amino acids. And it's technically a high quality source of protein. So all organ meats are a high quality source of protein. 3, they're great sources of choline. Choline is an essential nutrient that benefits the brain, the muscles, and our liver. They're rich in peptides. They're rich in fat soluble vitamins. I mentioned these already. Fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. We've learned that really all these fat soluble vitamins, they work together to promote bone health. Like vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium. Vitamin A prepares the body to use calcium, and the vitamin K2 helps shuttle the calcium to the right places. So right there, getting them all is really important. You don't want to isolate those vitamins. You don't want to just get one. You want to get them together. Mm-hmm. And then there's this concept called like supports like. So organs provide organ-specific nutrients. So let's just say if you are concerned about heart issues running in your family, well, you should be eating some heart, because the heart that you eat is going to support your heart. The spleen you eat is going to support your spleen. The liver you eat is going to support your liver, and ongoing. And then also, and this is key based on our earlier conversation, is organ meats are more affordable. So you're getting the same quality, 100% grass-fed, cow, right? The muscle meat of a ribeye might be $15 to $24. You could get the same from the same cow. You could get the tongue and it will be $4 to $7. So it's not just a little cheaper, it's like 3 times cheaper. And the tongue, if anyone that hasn't had it yet, tongue makes amazing kind of slow cooked meat. We have a recipe on our site at eatpluck.com under the recipes. You can look up tongue tacos, but it's one of those things that might seem overwhelming at first, but it's amazing because it has a similar texture to muscle meat. It has more nutrients and it has better taste. You just have to get over the fact that it has this kind of skin around it, this rough skin. And once you cook it, that skin peels right off. And underneath is this amazing kind of muscle. And you'll see it a lot at Mexican taco restaurants. It's called lengua.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing because it really takes on the sauce or the flavors you add it to. So super, super easy, super delicious, and right away can save you money by just eating organ meats.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Which organ meats are in the Pluck seasoning?
So we did 5. We did liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm sourcing the same high quality, 100% grass-fed cows, but I'm getting it from New Zealand because New Zealand has an amazing export system, and they utilize it's an island, and basically they're able to control the climate better, or the agricultural better due to the climate. They can sometimes 100% grass feed that year round because of the climate, because of their control. And they've created a system, a supply chain where they utilize the entire animal. So they have access to all of the organs, whereas we don't here in the US. A lot of the organs here in the US get designated not for human consumption, so they're sent to like pet food industry, or they're not allowed for us to use as food. So really, it's one thing that I'm hoping to change, and it's one of my goals to help support is change the supply chain in the US around organ meats. But we're able to get those 5 organs. They come to us freeze dried and powdered already, and it's mixed for us, and it's the same quality that you're getting when you order encapsulated organ meat products. Most of us are sourcing from New Zealand, and I took that product and I added it or combined it with organic spices and herbs, and I made it taste good, because that was definitely a big hurdle, as a lot of people were like, whether they've tried it or not, they just have this association that organ meat's going to taste bad. It's kind of funny to me because if I put like a cake in front of you that you've never tried, and I said, oh, here's this whatever cake, German chocolate cake, let's just say you've never had it. You're like, oh, well, let me try it, right? You'd be like, you'd have no hurdle to trying it. But if I put an organ in front of you that you've never tried, you'd be like, ick, like, I don't want to try that. And so I think it's funny that our mindset is so closed off to certain things and so open to other things, despite not trying either of them. But I definitely, hope that I think I've overcome that hurdle with Pluck, because we get feedback that everyone really, really loves it. I mean, you've tried it, right? So
Yes.
what are your thoughts?
Oh, I love it. I have the zesty garlic, and I've been putting it on everything, like my eggs, my meats, my sides, all of the things, and it tastes great. So, but I also, and you don't taste any kind of organ meat flavor to it. So yeah, it's amazing.
But you recognize it's different though. Like you can still taste the umami, right? That it has a flavor to it that's different.
It does.
Than other seasonings. It just doesn't, your brain doesn't connect it to organ meats.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, and how much is somebody actually getting from this, or how much do they need to consume to be able to get the vitamins and minerals from the seasoning?
Yeah, so the goal with Pluck, the seasonings at least, is really to get people who are not eating organ meats regularly to eat them regularly. Mm-hmm. And so I really see the flavors as gateways to organ meat. They're 15% organ meat blend, and I always kind of make sure people understand. So when I take a wet organ, 100% wet organ, and I freeze dry it, it goes down to about 23-25%. So you're losing 75% of its mass due to all the water weight lost. So when I say 15% of that organ, you can't equate it to a wet organ. It's concentrated 15%. So it is a good amount of a spice, but either way, no matter what, you've got to use it regularly, because or the whole point of the Pluck seasoning is that you're basically getting micro dosing plus frequent use equals cumulative effect. So you've got to be using it on every meal. And that's why, you know, that we made it delicious, because you really, as you just mentioned, you can add it to everything. Like you can put it on your breakfast, you could put it on your lunch, you could put it on your dinner. My kids, even we put it on popcorn, even if we watch a movie or something like that. So you can really go crazy and put it on everything, and then get that micro dosing frequently. Now, for those people that are like, I don't want the microdosing, I want the 100% nutrition all the time, and I want access to that all the time, we have another product called Pluck Pure, and that is just the organ meats. There's no spices, there's no herbs, there's no salt. It's literally the same thing as what's in the capsules, but there's no capsules. It's in a pouch. So you can spoon it into a smoothie, you can spoon it into spaghetti sauce or a curry. You basically you can add it to anything that already has flavor, and then get the 100%, you know, organ meat nutrition in everything that you want. And I recommend people do about a teaspoon a day with that. If that, they, you know, you can, what I love, this is something that actually doesn't get talked about a lot. And I love this product for this reason. So when I am low in salt, if I take my finger and I dip it into some really good sea salt and I put it in my mouth, my body gives my brain an immediate communication of like, oh, you need more of that, so do it again. Or it will say like, nope, you're good, like that was nice, but I don't want any more. And salt will actually taste different. It won't taste as appealing, right? There's an immediate communication between basically your body and your brain. Well, when we take a capsule, we completely bypass that communication. So you don't actually know, does your body need this? Does your body want this? How much of your body how much does your body need and want? You're just kind of following the back of the bottle, and it's telling you to take 6 to 8 capsules. So you're taking them, and then sometimes later you might even be feeling a little ill, or who knows what's going on, but you don't necessarily equate it to that because you've done 10 other things between taking those, right? Well, what I love about not having the capsules and having it in this powder form that's available to you, just to touch with your finger, put it in your mouth, you know, whatever it is, or take a spoonful of it, you're able to get that immediate communication. I'm not saying the flavor is going to be amazing, but I'm more just saying that you get that communication. Your body's going to tell you like, oh yeah, you need more of this. Or it's going to be like, oh, that was good. I'm good. Like that's enough for today. But I personally look for, that's what I love about real food, is you get that immediate communication and that immediate knowledge.
That's so cool. I honestly didn't even think of that. It's kind of like muscle testing in a sense, but most people don't know how to do muscle testing on themselves. So
Totally.
like you said, doing that and putting it in your mouth and actually consuming it is a better way to assess that. Very cool. What about people who want to actually try real organ meats? Do you have favorite ways of cooking those to make them actually taste good or enjoyable into someone's diet?
Yeah, I mean the key with easing into organ meats is really overcoming that mindset. So how I recommend people ease into it is, you know, we've been talking about Pluck. That's obviously, as I mentioned earlier, is the gateway. It's just so easy, and I'd say that's stage 1. So if you've never had organ meats, definitely start with Pluck. It's just it's no different than any seasoning, but it's got, you know, in terms of how it's stored, and you can keep it on your table, and you can just treat it like salt and pepper and just sprinkle it on your food. But what's good about starting with Pluck too is it helps us start to change your palate, because it's very I mentioned earlier, it's umami. It's got a specific taste to it, and that umami flavor is unique, and it's going to start to change your palate. And usually what umami does is it turns picky eaters into more adventurous eaters. So what happens is, just by starting to use Pluck, you're right away going to start to change the flavors that actually excite you, and kind of it's going to start to change your mindset and open you up. But you don't want to stop there. We definitely want to incorporate more nose to tail into our diet. So then I would say next would be to either purchase a blend, like a ground meat blend that already has organ meats in it, like Force of Nature has some, or make your own. And one of the really easy ways to make your own is to purchase, let's say, a beef liver, but keep it frozen after you purchase it. And because really we get overwhelmed with the organ meats once they're defrosted. If they're frozen, it's just a hard hunk of something, right? You don't even think about it. So keep it frozen. And then what you do is, well, you can do two things. You can either grate it into your ground meats. So literally just take a grater like it's cheese or something and just grate it. And it will, you keep the ratios fairly down. So you maybe do like 2 to 4 tablespoons. I would start maybe even with 1 and just kind of move up from there. But if you do too much, if you go over for a pound of meat, you want to keep it to about 4 tablespoons max. Because if you go over, then you're going to change the texture and the taste. And we're trying to not do that at this stage. We're trying to make it so it's seamless, so it tastes no different than, let's say, if you're making hamburgers. The hamburgers don't taste weird. They don't have a weird texture. We want it to be very everyday at first, because like I said, we're training your palate and we're changing your mindset and we're easing into it. The other thing you can do is you can take that liver and you can puree it, and then put it in your like your ice cubes, container, and basically make little ice cubes with it. And then you could pull those out whenever you want. You're making, I don't know, spaghetti sauce, or when you're making a smoothie, and you just add little small cubes to whatever you're doing, and you won't notice the taste. And so that's another way you can do it. And then after that, I would say, okay, now we help to support your palate. You're kind of being a little bit more adventurous. You're now ready to try an organ. And I would say start with chicken hearts specifically, because as I mentioned earlier, the heart, well, actually, I didn't mention this earlier. So I mentioned the tongue is kind of similar muscle. It has a similar meat to muscle. Well, so does the heart. Those are the 2 organs that are kind of closest to muscle meat. And so that's a powerful one to start with. They're small. They're also very mild and tender. Like they don't really taste like much, and they take on the flavor of whatever you're doing them with. So I would recommend, let's just say you're making a stir fry, and sometimes we add mushrooms to that stir fry. So we don't add 20 mushrooms. We add maybe like 2 to 4 mushrooms to that stir fry. And so do the same thing with the hearts. Just do like 2 to 4 and chop them up just like you would a mushroom, and then toss them in with all this other stuff, with other protein, with other vegetables, with the sauce, whatever it is. And you probably won't even realize it's in there. You literally, your brain will think it's a mushroom because of how you cut it and just the shape of it. So that would be kind of that next stage. And then from there, I would actually delve into the tongue, like I was talking about earlier. Like go to our site, get the recipe for tongue tacos, and just follow that. And once you do tongue, it's kind of hard to go back, because you start to realize, wow, this is easy, and the flavor is really good, and it's also more nutritious. And you can always eat, even with the tongue, similar to what we're doing with the chicken hearts, is you can like ease into it. Like, so you don't, like, let's just say I was making pulled tacos, right? And I'm slow cooking or pressure cooking the tongue. Well, I could still add pork butt or pork shoulder or beef to that. Like I don't have to only do the beef tongue. I could also do another meat, and then basically combine those meats in the sauce, and no one's going to know. So you don't have to be all or nothing. You can really truly ease into it, go gently, and support that palate change and that change of mindset as well.
Those are some really awesome creative ideas. So thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people, if they've tried it, they've probably gone all the way in, right? And tried like a liver pate or a liver and onions or something like that, which is very extreme. So I love that you can slowly layer these things in and change the palate. And I love the blends. I've used Force of Nature's, but then I also use US Wellness Meats, and they have that 75% ground beef, 25% already pre-made for someone who's like freaked out to use the organs. But yeah, I love the idea of slowly easing into all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. We have access to so many things. I mean, you just mentioned US Wellness Meats, that's online. Same with Force of Nature's. You can find it at grocery stores. You can go to your local farmers market and talk to the farmers there. A lot of times, even if they're not advertising that they have organs, they do have them. They're just not advertising it. So just talk to them and say, hey, do you have the tongue? Do you have the liver? Do you have chicken hearts? Whatever it is. And if they don't, they probably will bring them next time for you. it's amazing once you start talking to people what you can get access to. I mean, I know some people who, because it's really hard to get certain organs, like you can't, for the most part, finding, for example, cow brain, really, really challenging, really challenging.
Hmm.
But if you go to a local farmer and talk to them and potentially purchase a cow share or something like that, then you could probably get access to the brain. And that's that. I mean, the brain is one that I wish we could all be eating more of. I mean, think about when I talked about like supports like, right? Like think
Mm-hmm.
about if we were eating more brain. I just wonder, would that help with with Alzheimer's? Would that help with dementia?
Mm.
I don't know. It might. We don't know until we try. But I know that our ancestors used to eat every part of the animal.
Yep, nose to tail.
Yeah.
Well, I know you have some kids, so I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you have any cooking tips for parents on how to get kids to eat healthy foods.
Yeah, this is a fun topic. It's fun in that it's sometimes comedic and can be overwhelming because it's, I want to say it's hard being a parent. I mean, anyone that says, oh, I know some people love it, but I think everyone would agree it's challenging. You have to be in the moment. You have to be present to your kids even when you have other things on your mind. Um you have to constantly be introduced to new phases because they're growing, and you keep entering a new, you think you got it figured out, and then the next minute they're 10 or 13 and you're like, you don't have it figured out. So you have to kind of keep adapt to the changes, and then you have to do it all while you're also doing your career and making sure that your family is provided for. So very challenging for parents, I find. So I always feel like the best thing that a parent can do is, and it's ensure that they are not creating more work for themselves. So basically, like I know some parents will sometimes make multiple meals because everyone is eating something different or everyone has different preferences. And I personally am against that, severely against it. I mean, to the point, even when, like right now, I'll share that my oldest daughter's on a protocol because we did some testing. She has some stuff going on. And so we're not cooking specific for her. What we did was we got the whole family on her protocol. So we're
Mm-hmm.
all following her protocol, and we're even doing the supplements she's doing. And it's not because those supplements are ones that are okay for anyone to take. It's more because we just know, even without testing ourselves, that we probably have some of the issues she has. You know what I mean? So we're all following the same protocol. So to not only support our own health, but to really support her and to make it easier for everyone else. So that's one thing right away, is just stop making those sub meals. You know what I mean? Make one meal, and then to get out of that mindset of that there's a difference between adult food and kid food. There isn't one. Like, just because they're a kid doesn't mean their chicken has to be shaped like a dinosaur. It's like we really can eat the same foods. I mean, even when a child is first eating food, baby-led weaning is all about just giving them big chunks of things that they can gnaw on and just hold in their hand and have control over and experience, that you don't have to mash everything up. You don't have to treat all baby food as though it's supposed to look and taste the same. You can still give them varied textures, varied sizes, things like that. And you're right away setting them up for that variety and that adventuresome kind of palate later on if you do that. Then the other thing I would say is, and this is where it gets a little comedic, is people will say, I just don't understand my kid. They're completely addicted to chips, or they're completely addicted to Cheerios, and I can't get them off it. And it's like, well, who introduced them to Cheerios? Like, Cheerios, it's not like they're walking around and Cheerios are growing on trees. Like, someone brought it into the house and got them introduced to it, and like is giving it to them. And that's where as parents, we're all culprits, and I'm definitely, in my household, I'm the culprit. I tend to be the one that's like, oh, like, let's just get them this cereal this time, and so I'm the one that introduces this product that they probably shouldn't be eating in the first place. And then when they keep asking for it, it's like, oh, well, it's my fault. It's not their fault. Of course, they're going to want these addictive foods, these foods that were designed to, mess with their heads, like to get them to target their addictive qualities and their different needs and wants, right? And so, so I think we have to kind of check ourselves and be like, okay, let's not bring in foods that we don't want in our kids' diets into the house. Like, don't bring them in. If you still want to give them a treat sometimes, then make that treat something you have to do outside of the home. Like, you have to go out to get it. It actually becomes an experience, or you make it a little hard to get it, because if it's easy, we'll do it. And so if it's in the household, you're going to do it. You're going to have a day where you just can't control yourself. You're going to eat it. And then lastly, I would say is to work on starting meal planning. Meal planning is really, really helpful. And in that process, including your kid into the meal plan. But what's really powerful about a meal plan is that you can design the whole food week off of your schedule. So if you have a really busy week, you can make sure that day's food is maybe a slow cooker day. You can change that meal plan according to your work week. You also can always make sure you're cooking more. You're kind of batch cooking. So whenever you're cooking dinner, make sure you cook twice as much, because that dinner is tomorrow's lunch, right? So you can always make your next day easier if you have leftovers. And then third is you just include the kids into the process the whole time. Like, pick a cookbook off your shelf and they're going through with you, and they're like, what looks interesting? They're including in on that process. You go to the grocery store together to buy the things. They're in that process. Maybe when you're cooking them, they're helping you. Because one thing I love to do as a chef with my kids is, like, I'll say, well, let's taste this red pepper when it's raw. Let's taste it when it's cooked. And let's taste it when it's dipped in this sauce. And let's see which one we like. And so I get them like really trying things at different stages. And once again, it helps to inform their palate. It helps them to be more adventurous, and it helps them to see how the produce tastes in its raw state, and then how cooking it or manipulating it in any way changes the taste and or texture.
Those are some amazing tips. Thank you so much. And how do your kids feel about the Pluck seasonings?
I do not joke about this. Like, they love it. Like, I'm not just saying that because I made it. Like, they ask for it all the time. Just the other day, or actually even just this morning, I was making I had soaked some walnuts last night, and I was making some what I call pluck nuts. So basically I soak the nuts, and this recipe is actually on our website. I drain it, and then I add like a little bit of ghee to it, and then I stick it in a low heat oven, about 300 degrees, and I just roast it. And then in that process, I add some pluck to it as well. And you get these really delicious nuts. And they kept walking in the kitchen going like, what smells so good? And I'm like, oh, well, I made some pluck nuts. And they're like, oh, like they love it on every level, from the taste to the smell to they miss it when they put it on even toast. I mean, they put it on everything.
That's awesome. I've got to try some of the recipes on your website. And also, for anybody who's listening, we have a special for you guys. So if you go to, there's going to be a link in the show notes to eatpluck.com, and you can actually use the code NHR10, all capital letters, NHR10, and you get 10% off of anything you get from Pluck. So you guys can start experimenting, start getting the organ meats into your nutrition plan, and maybe getting that into your kids as well, because it sounds like the kids love it too. So final question, which I ask everybody on this show, if you could leave the listeners with one tip to help them live a healthier, happier life that maybe they could implement today or this week, what would that be?
Well, I should probably say something around organ meats, since that's my focus, but
could be anything.
Yeah, I have to default to two things that really, I mean, you know, in all my time, these are the two biggest movers. They really are. And I can't even tell you how I test myself every few years, and I always come up slightly dehydrated. So one of the movers is just drinking water. And I even now drink it with electrolytes to kind of support the absorption of the water, but really making sure that not only you drinking the water, but that you're absorbing it is key. And then the other is sleep. And the reason I put sleep even above food is because I make better choices when I have good sleep. So sleep tends to affect not only how the decisions I make in life, but the food decisions I make the next day. And so I really feel it's a huge precursor to your health, because if you're not rested, if you're not, of sound mind and body, then you're not going to make good decisions around your health. You're going to make more immediate gratification decisions. And whenever we go for immediate gratification, we're going to go towards those high flavor, low nutrient density foods, like chips and cookies and anything that's got lots of flavor and potentially certain fats, but not necessarily the good stuff that we want in our body.
Yeah, exactly. And that lack of sleep stimulates our hunger hormones more too. So we're just automatically eating more calories. So totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show. If you want to, feel free to share any last comments or where people can find you if they want to chat with you or anything like that.
Yeah, we're on social media at Eat Pluck, and then I'm personally at Chef James Barry, and that's Barry with an A, Barry. And please, if you do get some Pluck, make sure to post about it and to tag us, because we love to see how people use it. We're still a young company. We've been out for about a year and a half. And so we're still learning and growing with our customers. So please join us on that mission.
Great. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for watching the episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure that you like the video and leave a comment and share it with a friend who really needs to hear it. Because when you share this information, you're also going to help other people level up their health. And if you or somebody else you know wants to work on their health and they're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, feel free to reach out to me to apply to work together. Thanks for watching, and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.